Washington, I know you're shocked. Also at that point, there were a whole lot of politicians that were saying, well, as we did financial reform, just shut them down right now. If, gosh, in retrospect, if we were to shut down Fannie and Freddie in 2008 and 2009, the housing market would have still completely crashed. So what happened was we basically punted on housing finance reform. And then we, 2009, 2010, 2011, I think our efforts in housing finance, trying to bring the housing market back, and the president's had all kinds of programs. There's HARP and HEMP and, all these refinancing things. And they've been, some of them have worked, most of them haven't worked that much. And a lot of folks in the housing finance business, basic housing finance, quote-unquote experts, would come around and basically say to me and other senators and stuff, please, you guys just don't screw up anything. This will pass. Let the system work its way through. The thing has been, it really has taken a lot longer than any of us would have anticipated. And those of you on the Will or some front are probably saying, you're damn right. Darn right. And it's only been in the last, what would you say, year and a half that the market started to come back. And so what happened is, starting about a year ago, Bob Corker, who is a senator from Tennessee, Republican senator from Tennessee, a good Tennessee tie over here, who is a good friend of mine. He and I worked together on Dodd-Frank, and we said, let's take a crack at this housing finance reform. And we have been working about a year, talking to everybody from the realtors, the builders, the mortgage bankers, the low-income housing advocates, Michelle, wait your name. Although you name it. We talked to all kind of the experts and industry folks across the board. And there's really three different positions that have been kind of ideologically or whatever taken on how we ought to do housing finance reform. Ours is the one in the middle. On one end, and this may actually be a position that some of you would take at this point, at one end, there's a whole group of people that say, oh, there's really not a problem here because Fannie and Freddie are actually starting to make money again. Why change the system at all? Although, interestingly enough, what the Treasury Department did, they did something that was a little bit kind of interesting. They said, what they said was to Fannie and Freddie, remember there's these 20% group of shareholders who had some of this stock left, because the stock was worth zero back in 09 and 10 and stuff. But as Fannie and Freddie just started to make money again, and remember, they owe us taxpayers $188 billion just to kind of get whole. Treasury said, we're going to ensure that no matter what money Fannie and Freddie pays back or makes as money, we, the taxpayers, are going to take that money as dividend payments and not as repayment of the capital we mentioned. So technically, Fannie and Freddie could be making hundreds of billions of dollars, and they would still be $188 billion in the hole to us. So in reality right now, and this number may be slightly off because they just made another payment in the last couple of weeks, they have actually, Fannie and Freddie together, have paid back about $130 billion in dividend payments to us. But the way it is recorded is they still owe us $188 billion. Now, you can say that doesn't seem very fair to the shareholders, and the fact was, but for the federal government, they would have completely gone down. And what is interesting, and this is again more detail than you want to know, but there's been a group of hedge fund guys who about a year and a half ago, started saying, well, maybe there's some value here. And they've started buying up all this little stub 20% shares, and they are madder than hell now. Oh my gosh, there's value here. We need to get all this money, just recapitalize Fannie and Freddie and put a new name on them, and take them public again. So that's one position, and there's some people that, there are some people in the industry that would say, well, that would be the least disruptive. That would, and from those of you who are kind of on the ground in the real estate business, that might be fine, and let's just let it go. Candidly, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think the American taxpayer are going to say, okay, we're going to want to make you hedge fund guys make a lot of money and have a system where we've got, if things are going good, private sector gains, but if things are going bad, public sector eats the losses. I just don't think the status quo is going to work. And there are some, and our low-end affordable housing folks in areas will not agree with this, and I actually don't agree with it either, but there are a lot of people that say the only reason Fannie and Freddie got into problem was because they had a responsibility to do affordable housing and fair housing, and consequently they were, financing people that they shouldn't have financed. I don't buy that, but there are, people who believe that very strongly. But I do think it is a complicated issue. I think we have a role for affordable housing and fair housing. We need to support that. But I do think from a kind of clean sheet of paper, it's hard to give a for-profit company a social purpose role as well. Because at some point, shareholder interest and social purpose are going to rub against each other. So one end is, let's just take Fannie and Freddie, recapitalize them, take them public again, put a new name on them, and keep the system basically status quo. The other end, and this is the more kind of really true blue conservative free market types, are saying, government shouldn't be involved in anything, government shouldn't be involved in the housing market, this is a subsidy to one sector of our economy, it's government picking winners and losers, and so, we should take government completely out of the role of housing finance and have a private sector market alone. Somebody wants to buy a house or securitize a package of mortgages, it ought to be all private sector capital that backs it and have no government guarantee at all. And this effort is led by, Mr. Henseling, a Republican House member. And, the advantages of that model are it's, ideologically market pure. It obviously would mean the taxpayer would have no exposure. Two things would happen if we had that market. One would be there would never be a 30-year fixed mortgage. And two, the price of mortgages would go up, I don't know, 1%, 2%, 100 basis points, 200 basis points, 250 basis points. It's pretty clear it will go up quite a lot. So Corker and I said, how do we keep what's the good, what are our goals here? We want to keep a 30-year fixed mortgage. We want to, and Corker had to be convinced on this, we want to make sure there's this government backstop so that there is liquidity in the marketplace. But we want to make sure that, the private sector takes the risk. We want a lot more private capital in the marketplace. And so we worked with a group of folks. We had a conservative, we had a liberal, we had a centrist. How many of y'all heard, who follow this trade press, know this guy Mark Sandy? He's quoted a bunch of times and stuff. He was one of the guys who was helping us to talk to all the industry people. And here's what we came up with in our approach. We said, first of all, we don't want to do anything that's going to screw up the market. So anything, if we're going to move from the existing Fannie, Freddie, FHFA system to something new, we want to not do it overnight because, I know this is going to be a revelation to you all, but Congress, no matter how well we are well-intended, we never get it exactly right. Can you say Affordable Care Act or Obamacare or Dodd-Frank? We're going to probably get it, we hopefully we're going to get directionally right, but try to make sure that we realize we're going to have to probably come back and fix it. So we said, let's make sure if we start a new system, that we're going to have a 5-year transition period. So we're not, if we got some of this stuff wrong, during the transition period, we can come back and fix it so again, we don't disrupt the market. Last thing we want to do is after this market has been down for 4 or 5 years and things are starting to come up, to put something out there that's going to screw up the recovery. Point one. Point two, we said, let's go ahead and separate the functions into kind of different buckets. So the first bucket is, who's going to originate the loan? Who's going to find the buyer and seller and put them together? And that's going to be the realtors. And who's going to finance that to start with? That's going to be the banks and the credit unions and mortgage bankers and others. That function will still, you'll still do the same thing. What we will do, though, is we'll say, let's take all of the functions that in the past were kind of, depending on what bank you used or what institution you used, were very different. And let's have a standardized, reps and warranties, standardized, settlement documents, standardized servicing documents on a common, transparent platform. And that service really is kind of a utility service. That would be everybody that wants to get securitized with a government backstop would use this common securitized platform.